jumped the fence and ran south. He's at the northwest corner of that grove.
Watch this video, obtained exclusively by Team 6 investigators. 4 Miami-Dade cops surround a suspect as he cowers under a tree. These are the final seconds of his life. And tonight we continue our investigation into police shootings with the lingering doubts prosecutors have about a Miami-Dade police sting gone terribly wrong.
And we want to warn you here, some of the video you're going to see is graphic. Here's Team 6 investigator Tony Pipitone.
Prosecutors question whether officers who opened fire during the Redlands sting 3 years ago really saw and heard what they claim, citing unusual, counterintuitive, suspicious, and disturbing factors. They had no choice but to rely on police witnesses. All others had been silenced, shot dead by the cops, leaving no proof, prosecutors say, that any crime was committed. Our story includes infrared video of actual killings. We think you have the right to see it and judge for yourself.
In the northwest corner of the grove.
Miami-Dade County has never seen anything like it. As infrared cameras roll from aircraft, police kill 4 men, including their informant, in this botched sting operation in the Redland. 3 years later, the Office of State Attorney Kathleen Fernandez-Rundle cannot say definitively that 3 of those police killings were justifiable.
Are there question marks? Of course there are question marks. There are a lot of too many question marks.
So many, her office found, no charges can be filed against the officers. When a Miami-Dade officer shoots someone, the agency's homicide detectives investigate. Rundle says cops investigating their own is a conflict of interest and wants the Florida Department of Law Enforcement to take over.
Do you think that could have had a different resolution had someone else been investigating that?
I wouldn't jump to there could be charges filed, but what I would say is this: we wouldn't be asking these questions.
Questions like, wouldn't informant Rosendo Betancourt scream out the code phrase that identified him as the informant?
I'm heading to Disney.
He used it 3 times earlier, but when his life was on the line, police claim he was silent, then suddenly reached for a gun in his waistband, forcing them to open fire. A surrendering informant going for a gun?
There's a lot of there that just leaves big holes and big questions.
So why didn't you charge them?
There was not a crime that we could prove.
While Betancourt cannot speak from the grave, an audio recorder hidden in a watch police gave him might have, but somehow, from the time you see this watch here until after he's killed, it disappeared.
That would have been a critical piece of evidence.
What do you think he would have said?
I would imagine that he would have been making the statements that he was instructed to make if there was a problem and to identify himself as a CI.
In other words,
I'm heading to Disney World.
But faced with the live officer's statement that the informant went silently to his death by reaching for a gun,
We are bound to accept the statement unless I can prove something to the contrary.
we showed the video and other evidence to attorney Gene Baker of the ACLU,
Oh my God.
who believes there are enough discrepancies for a manslaughter prosecution.
There is no rule of law that says that the prosecutors, when evaluating a case, are compelled to accept as truthful the testimony of the subject of the investigation.
But Police Union President John Rivera defends the state attorney's decision not to prosecute.
Well, if there's not enough evidence, there's not enough evidence.
And the fact no Florida officer's been prosecuted in 25 years for a shooting?
Well, I would suggest that the shootings are all justified.
After all, he says, police are at battle.
It's a war not fought in Iraq. It's a war fought in the streets of Paradise Lost. And that war continues each and every day in Miami-Dade County.
There's a big difference between soldiers in a war in combat and police officers. The training is different, or should be different.
In the Redland case, prosecutors say the first killing of Jorge Lemus, as he held this handgun at the front of the house, was clearly justified, but are unsure about the rest. Consider Antonio Andrew. 4 minutes after Betancourt was killed, a police officer gave him conflicting orders. Don't move your hands, and let me see your hands underneath your waistband. When Andrew followed the second command to show his hands, one officer said Andrew made a quick movement towards his waist area. Officers fired a dozen bullets and killed him.
If your hands are at your waistband, how can you make a move for your waistband?
I don't know, but it made no sense to me.
But when that officer gave his statement here at police headquarters, Horn could not ask him why he gave conflicting commands. That's because that officer and others would only give statements if no prosecutor was present, just their union lawyer and fellow Miami-Dade police investigators. Of the 11 shooting officers, 4, one from each killing scene, gave voluntary statements under those conditions. The other 7 exercised their right to remain silent.
I was having nightmares about this case. I'm serious. This consumed us.
The best documented killing is the last of ringleader Roger Gonzalez, who dropped or discarded his gun as he fled and was found cowering at the base of a tree. That officer, behind the tree with Gonzalez's back to him, said in his statement Gonzalez made a quick move into his waistband, forcing them to open fire. They shot 52 rounds, but prosecutors question whether that officer was even in a position to see what he says he saw. Still, Gonzalez is not alive to say otherwise.
We've got no evidence to counter that.
And confusion or misstatements, prosecutors say, are not evidence of a crime. For instance, officers say they saw a rifle and heard a gunshot at the outset of the operation, but neither existed.
There was no long rifle and there was no shot, which we conclusively determined.
It's troubling to us that, there was a surveillance watch that we couldn't find.
But the operation was not troubling to Miami-Dade police. The lieutenant who ran the operation, Calvin James, was promoted to major. The officers will not face criminal charges, but are subjects of an internal affairs investigation. They declined comment. As we revealed yesterday, Miami-Dade taxpayers will pay $600,000 to the families of 3 of the men killed. The Informant survivors lawsuit is pending in federal court. By the way, 3 of the 4 men shot had prior felony convictions. Lemus, the one whose shooting was ruled justifiable, had none. Team 6 investigator Tony Pipitone, NBC6, South Florida.